welcome into the Hoist the Colors podcast. Just wanted to join you guys for a quick edition of the HTC podcast because, ladies and gentlemen, we have an ECU football schedule. We have a 2023 East Carolina football schedule. We are live on the Hoist the Colors podcast on YouTube, on Facebook. If you're listening, you got any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments. This will be a shorter podcast, but just wanted to share my initial thoughts on the schedule with you guys and also read any comments you'll have as well. I know there's a lot of hot takes on the schedule. The American Athletic Conference, Scott Lorbatcher tuned in, letting us know to don't forget to hit the like button and ring the bell for notifications on YouTube. Yes, subscribe, like, all of it so we can get our numbers up. Again, we just had our baseball podcast last night, ECU off to a 3-0 start. Check that out on our live stream pages, YouTube and Facebook. But, guys, we got a schedule, and I'm excited. To me, there's nothing like seeing the schedule laid out as it is. Like, we knew the opponents, and that's cool and all, but when you have the dates – I guess we're still officially waiting on the game designations as far as what's going to be homecoming and, letter winners weekend and all that sort of stuff. But as I look at the schedule, there are some things I like. There are some things that I dislike. We'll pull it up here shortly for all of us to look at. And look, we all knew that the opening of this schedule was always going to be brutal. Did we lose audio? I think I may be back now. We may have lost audio, but I am back now. Either way, one of the things that I do like about this schedule, guys, is I think I think Rice as the opener is a manageable American Athletic Conference opener. Uh, for me, like if you're going to pick any of those teams, Rice is probably at the top for me. I am back. Scott lets me know. I guess as I removed myself from the stream, I guess that removed my audio as well. So sorry about that, guys. I'm now back. We knew the non-conference was going to be tough, and for me, having Rice as an opener is a manageable conference opener. And then you get a bye week. I would have liked to maybe seen that bye week a little bit later, but it's not the worst in the world. Having it after your first 5 games, to me, it beats last year when you had to play 8-9 games before you finally got it in the back half of the season. So to me, Rice, I think, is a good conference opener. You get the bye week before probably one of your more challenging league games and what could be a pivotal league game against a very talented SMU squad. They're bringing in a bunch of transfers. I think they're going to have a really good team this year, at least talent-wise. We'll see how their coaching staff does. But, overall, I think the middle part of the schedule is favorable. SMU also has a bye before that Thursday night game. I guess the league doesn't want to give either team an advantage in that regard. But to me, I think that's a favorable draw to play Rice and then SMU and then Charlotte as your first 3 league games. Like, those are 3 winnable league games. Not that any of the other ones aren't winnable, but you have a chance to kind of set yourself up for a decent start there. And then it gets challenging. The stretch of at UTSA, for those unfamiliar with Texas San Antonio football, they're going to be, I think, one of the better teams in this league upon entry. I mean, they've been playing at a high level, kind of a top 25 level for really the last few years, and they returned a lot of talent. They've been able to keep that coach. It's a tough place to play. To me, that's your most challenging road game outside of Michigan and App State. You look at Tulane, everybody knows what they did last year. So that stretch of at UTSA and Tulane back to back is not going to be easy. And then you play two more road games after that. We know what Navy is, even without Ken Niumatalolo. I still think they're going to be really good. I like Brian Newberry. You know, we'll see how he makes the transition to head coach. But I feel like overall, that stretch, starting with UTSA, really through Navy, because even FAU to me is somewhat of a sleeper team in that you're in Florida. You got Tom Herman as your head coach now. So I'm just curious to see how ECU manages that schedule. But I think if you put this schedule together, if you're Mike Houston and you wanted to have kind of something to, I don't know, have a say-so in the schedule, you would maybe want to have a softer front with what's likely to be a younger football team rather than, opening up conference play, let's say at UTSA on September 30th. I mean, that would be a difficult conference opener. I feel like the trip to Rice is a manageable game. So feel free to weigh in with your thoughts, your comments. I'm going to share some other thoughts here shortly. If you drop any comments, we'll share them on the air. For the first time in, I believe, a couple years, Navy does not have a bye before playing ECU. So apparently Mike Houston's plea to the conference worked quite a bit. But, outside of that, nobody else really has an advantage before playing ECU that I noticed looking at the schedule. Again, SMU has that same bye, but ECU has the bye too before the Thursday night game. So Scott Lorbatcher says UTSA, FAU, and Tulane both are all on the road the week before they play us. Tulane is in a stretch of three road games in 4 weeks that ends with us. So, yeah, I mean, the tough stretch for really all those teams, I guess, in that stretch. So if you're the American Athletic Conference, they seem to be wanting to make that the make or break portion of the season. Again, we don't have TV designations, and again, we won't get those until 12 days out from kickoff once the season opens. But you would think kind of the way they're stacking those games in there, they expect UTSA, Tulane, SMU has some tough games in there as well in that stretch where it's October to November. That's typically where the conference race forms as the season unfolds. So I think we will see quite a bit happen there. And if you're ECU, if you can get off to a 2-1 start in league play, or even 3-0 with Rice, SMU, and Charlotte, as you go to UTSA, as you take on Tulane, those are pivotal conference games. You could be having ESPN2 games, clearly ESPNU a possibility during that stretch. But, it's not – I don't want to say the schedule lays out great, but I don't think it lays out terrible either. I think it's just – it's okay. We do have to address the season finale. I mean, nobody wants the Thanksgiving weekend home game. This time it's Tulsa coming to ECU on Thanksgiving weekend. I think it was 2019. Tulsa also wrapped up the season at East Carolina. Mike Houston's first year. They actually beat the brakes off East Carolina and Greenville that day. That was not a fun day. It was a lax crowd. It's probably going to be a lax crowd again. Really the last time ECU had a solid crowd was the last time they played on Thanksgiving weekend. That was Cincinnati, and that was also the number 3 or 4 team in America at that time. And it was a good crowd. It was around 40,000. It was loud, but that took some pretty special circumstances. You had an ECU team ascending upward. You had a marquee opponent playing for a college football playoff bid. I can't see Tulsa drawing too many butts in the seats on November 24th or 25th. It's listed as both right now because it could be that Friday or Saturday, depending on what the conference wants to do, what TV, ESPN want to do. So you kind of hate that you have that game to close the season rather than it being maybe a week earlier. It wouldn't be a bad thing to close at FAU on November 25th as opposed to playing them a few weeks earlier. So, but, it is what it is. The conference is going to try and rotate those every few years. You're not going to play Thanksgiving home weekend games to close out your season every year. but more than likely about 50% of the time you're going to get that draw. And we were talking earlier, it is rivalry week, and you would like to maybe see the conference try and promote some rivalry, so to speak. One way to not do that is to have ECU play Charlotte, the one regional opponent in this league, in the middle of October rather than to close out the season. Why not? If you're going to put ECU at the home game to close out the year, why not do Charlotte? Why not try to build that rivalry a little bit? And I know East Carolina fans are not the biggest fan of, Charlotte joining the conference in some regards, but at least it is a potential regional rivalry, which to me is somewhat exciting. Not that I don't think it's going to happen overnight, but one way you can start to build that is by putting that game the last week of the season. We saw the American do it with USF and UCF. Why can't we do that with ECU and Charlotte? I mean, that just seems obvious. I mean, let's be real. There is no tie between East Carolina and Tulsa. None. Like I don't know a single person that has a tie to Tulsa in my life outside of those I've maybe met covering the games at Tulsa or vice versa. I just don't understand it. So it is what it is. Scott also adds in the comment section, Charlotte for homecoming instead of rivalry week is not a great decision. Homecoming already boosts attendance. Yeah, I mean, I think it's something where, to me, I just don't understand the league, what they're trying to do there with not promoting that rivalry right out the gate. I mean, you have a new league, you got new teams joining the new league, and it just doesn't make any sense. So all in all, a tough schedule. I'm not going to sit here and run down each game, win or loss, this early in the process, but did want to jump on, share my thoughts. I think, realistically, Michigan's going to be a loss, barring something crazy. Even if you go 1-1 in those next two, if you go 2-1, I think you're sitting pretty. But you could go 1-1 against Marshall and App State, beat Gardner-Webb, then you're at 2-2, and then if you win two of those next three between Rice, SMU, and Charlotte, you're going to be at 4-3 at that point, and then set yourself up for at least a potential bowl bid with some winnable games down the stretch. Tulsa, ECU will probably be favored. Navy, we'll see how they are. FAU, I think, is a kind of a game right now ECU would be favored in, but we don't know what type of impact Tom Herman will make. And then, Tulane and Greenville historically struggles. We know that Tulane's made great strides under Willie Fritz, but that's still a game that I could see ECU winning. So I just think you got to find a way to manage the start of the schedule. You certainly don't want to start 0-3 with a young team. If you start 2-1, I think you're in line for a potential special year. I mean, realistically, I know App is losing several players, but they're going to be fired up to play East Carolina in Boone, which has not happened in a very long time. We know what Marshall they think of the rivalry, what that means to their fan base, so they'll be fired up to come here. And then even Gardner-Webb, an FCS opponent, is much improved. I believe they were in the playoffs last year. So the non-conference for me is probably the toughest part of the schedule outside of UTSA, Tulane, and that stretch where you play 3 out of 4 road games, including UTSA, FAU, and Navy. So we'll see. I mean, there's so much unknown this year with the new conference. As bring it up one more time again. Any questions, comments you got, drop them before I get out of here. I just want to jump on and share some initial thoughts. Give us a like, subscribe, all that. I think, I don't even know outside of Tulane, who in this league is supposed to be good. I mean, I think UTSA will be good. I think Tulane will probably be the preseason favorite, but that's based off what they did last year. They're losing some key defensive players, and that they're losing Tajay Spears. So I just don't really know what to expect from this league overall. It's SMU will probably be picked towards the top, but I'm not sold on Rhett Lashley. So for me, it's kind of a wide open year. I don't really know what to expect from ECU. I think East Carolina is a major unknown as well. So if you're Vegas, I don't even know what you put the win total at. I think I would put it at 6.5 for ECU. I think that's a fair number. A lot of unknowns, but a lot of winnable games. a lot of toss-up games, but also not many games you look at the schedule. If you follow college football and you understand some of these teams, some of the programs that have made jumps the past few years, there's not too many games you look at the schedule and you circle, hey, that's a win. For me, like outside of Gardner Webb, I don't know. I mean, that's obviously one you chalk up as a win. Probably Charlotte, but outside of that, and maybe Tulsa, like you're heavy favorites in those games on paper. But outside of that, I think it's pretty wide open. Let's get back to some of the comments here before we wrap up. Bubba Rosenbaum asks or adds, "We will play in front of 108,000 at the Big House and 1K at Rice." Yeah, I mean you're right there. I mean the it's going to be something, and I think a lot of ECU fans are going to make that trip to Ann Arbor. I think 0 ECU fans are going to make the trip to Rice. Well, maybe a couple. I want to say 0. But there is absolutely 0 atmosphere at Rice football games. I personally have never covered a football game at Rice. Have 0 desire to be honest. But I'll probably be there this year on September 30th. Mr. Wan's World also adds lots of opponents have away games before playing East Carolina. Yeah, that's an advantage. I mean, I think it definitely is. You don't want to get. I think Navy might play a home game before hosting ECU as well, but you definitely typically don't want to place or play 2 teams back to back. Home games because they're kind of in their comfort zone in that realm. B Pace chiming in says Charlotte is homecoming. Just book rooms in Annapolis at Hilton Garden Inn downtown. All right, so he's going to Navy. Yeah, Navy is a great trip. If you haven't been before, it's an awesome place to watch a football game. So have they released the designations for the games or have they just released homecoming? Because I briefly read through the read through the release. Okay, now I see it as I check the schedule. They got Marshall as painted purple. They got the Gardner Webb game as painted gold. As I check the official ECU schedule online. Okay, homecoming is Charlotte, along with letter winners weekend. Military Appreciation Day is Tulane on November 4th, and then Senior Day is Tulsa, of course. And that game date, according to the schedule, will be announced on October 9th. So family weekend as well will be the Gardner Webb game. So there's your designations as well as the dates, and we'll continue to chime in here with some comments. Tulane, as Mr. Wan continues to add to his earlier comment, Tulane, UTSA, App, Gardner Webb, Rice, FAU, all away heading into our games, and Charlotte has Navy ahead of us. Always tough to face the triple option and then face somebody else. Jonathan Kennington says 11-2, AAC champs, book it. That would be a hell of a year, Jonathan, and I can't say that I'm backing you quite yet, but nothing would surprise me about this year's team. I think they're going to surprise some people talent-wise. It's just a matter of how it all comes together. B Pays, yeah, we haven't really touched on the Thursday game. He says he likes having SMU on a Thursday. How do we feel about Thursday night home games? If you're the older fan with kids or just don't like staying up late, you're probably not in favor of it. If you're the students, you love it. Scott Lorbatcher also adds Night of the Boneyard versus SMU has the makings of a fun night in Dowdy Ficklin. And that's going to be a pivotal midseason game, kind of a swing game as I look at the schedule. I think that's a game to me that could swing things either way. You win that game at home against probably one of the upper echelon teams in the league, talent-wise, that could swing you to a special season. SMU, historically, not a very good road team, especially on the East Coast. They struggle with physicality. They struggle playing away from Dallas, Texas. They sometimes struggle playing on grass. And so I think that's a favorable matchup for ECU in Greenville. So yeah. Bubba Rosenbaum adds, we have to get beyond that at 10 because the Pirates are playing late season attendance. I guess he's talking about the Tulsa game. But yeah, I mean, that's historically ECU football attendance drops off as the year goes on for for one reason or another, whether it's cold, whether it's people don't like the teams in the league compared to maybe some of the more regional non-conference teams. That's just something ECU's always struggled with. Mr. Wands World says he's definitely going to Navy. Wanted to go to both Boca Raton, which is where FAU is, and Annapolis, but they are back to back. Yeah, even as somebody who covers the team, it's tough to make back to back road trips as a sports writer, with my expenses sometimes paid for. So that's not easy for the fan. It's not easy for the team. It's not easy for me as a sports writer, and so you would like to see maybe those two get spread out a little bit, but it is what it is. ECU has played back-to-back road games and played back-to-back road games well under Mike Houston before, so I don't. And the thing I do like about where this thing gets tough is that historically under Mike Houston, ECU plays very good late October to November, really outside of the Houston game and the very end of last year, where things I think were not in sync in the locker room to an extent. But his teams usually get better. We saw it last year during the stretch against Memphis, UCF, and BYU in October, into late October, into November. So they played well at Cincinnati, and so I think this comes at a good time where a lot of these personnel changes will be meshing later in the season. Jeff Betcher says he doesn't like the Thursday night games at all. He thinks that our record is not very good on Thursday night. Yeah, I feel like it's gotten, the last time they played USF at home on a Thursday night, they found a way to win. It wasn't pretty. It was raining. The students were having a good time. I don't think anybody else was even hardly in the stands, but I thought overall it was a decent atmosphere, and I would expect with the program having 2 winning seasons since then, you'll get a good atmosphere. It's also, you got to remember too, you got the road game at Rice, and then you got a bye week, so people are going to be itching for a home football game come that Thursday. So I think you'll get a good bump in attendance for that game just based off that. If it was back-to-back home games, that would be difficult. To convince the family to come out on a short week on Thursday night, which we've seen before at ECU. John Moody adds, looking forward to the App State and Michigan trips. Yeah, I personally have never seen a game at either location, and really looking forward to those venues. And I think it's something that if you can go, definitely go, especially go to at least one if you can manage it. I've been to Boone, but haven't been there for a football game. And so looking forward to seeing that atmosphere again. We talked about earlier, they'll be fired up to play the Pirates. And Michigan is Michigan. When else are we going to see ECU playing the big house? Maybe not again in our lifetimes. So I think that's definitely worth the trip, even if ECU is a 40-point underdog. John Moody also adding, hopefully we can avoid the Black Friday game. Yeah. Either way, it's not going to be good, but I do think at least ECU will have some. They'll put some input in. Also, I won't say that they'll have some control over it, because at the end of the day, it's ESPN and it's the Americans' call. But the American does know, and they do value East Carolina's fan base. So if the American has basically a choice between Saturday and Friday, and they're even for television purposes, I think they will choose that Saturday. But if they need a TV slot on Friday, if ESPN needs a TV spot, I mean, at the end of the day, ESPN's running the show. They are running college football. They have a contract with the American, the rights to broadcast the game. But I agree with you. Hopefully we get at least that Saturday so people can get some family time Thursday and Friday, and then make it back to the stadium for that Saturday, November 25th game. All right. I'm going to get out of here unless we get any more final questions. Again, appreciate you guys' patience. I guess we had an audio blip earlier, so I'll have to go back and edit that for the podcast. But either way, just wanted to get on, share some initial thoughts. Again, we have the East Carolina 2023 football schedule. Just love seeing it, how it's laid out. We got the dates. I guess we do have the designations after all. Again, check that out on the ECUPirates.com website. We will be back probably later this week for a fresh edition of the podcast, either talking basketball. I'm going to try to do something post women's basketball Hopefully they win. And then going into the Houston game for the men, again, the men will be hosting the number one ranked team nationally heading into Saturday for the first time ever in Minnie's Coliseum. So get out to support the women on Wednesday. Get out to support the men on Saturday. Of course, support the baseball team as they host North Carolina Friday and Saturday, weather permitting. We'll see how that unfolds and then head to Chapel Hill on Sunday. We will talk to you guys next time. Until then, keep hoisting the colors. Appreciate all your support and comments.